Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn Live video feed, the link to which I've now just placed in the chat room. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate by asking questions and making comments. To do so, please either write in the chat room or turn on your microphone and say hi, and I'll be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, our featured guests are 4 political activists and former volunteers for Beyond War: Libby Traubman, Margie Lee, Tony Lee, and Winslow Myers. Welcome, Libby. So I'd like to ask you, tell us about the beginnings of this organization, Beyond War, a new way of thinking. Tell us about how it started, how you got involved, and what exactly it was all about.
Okay, thank you, Simeon, for inviting us to do this, to share our history about Beyond War, a new way of thinking, which really takes us back to the early 1980s. And honestly, I believe that this conversation couldn't come at a better time because, as I'm sure everybody is aware, that there are wars occurring all around the planet right now, and people are so preoccupied with each one, especially what's happening, we know, in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians and Gaza. Everything is telling us, again, that wars don't work. And so that is our experience back in the 1980s. That is the way things started for us. In 1982, a group of us citizens who lived in the Bay Area and were focused on other lifestyle issues were invited to attend a film put on by IPPNW, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. And the film was to show us what would happen if one nuclear bomb was dropped on San Francisco, where we were all attending this film. And I remember well the Dr. Jack Geiger, who went into great detail about the devastation that would occur, both not just to the total environment, but to all the people living there. And he talked about the immediate death, and then he talked about the long-term death that would happen because of the exposure to radiation and so forth and so on. The whole thing was a big wake-up call and very shocking and very overwhelming in that moment. And it reminded us of the quote that Albert Einstein had said in 1945, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything save our modes of thinking, and we thus drift towards unparalleled catastrophe." And here we were in 1980, drifting towards that unparalleled catastrophe between the United States and the Soviet Union. So following that film and that wake-up call, a group of us said, oh my God, we have to do something about this. This is a new reality, and we can't just go home as if we heard nothing. And we remembered that Thomas Jefferson had said, there's nothing more important than education to empower the people. So that's what we decided to do. And that was the beginning of the Beyond War movement. So what we did is we met in small groups and we planned an introductory program. And we decided that we were going to take it as far and wide as possible. And we wrote up books and we wrote up an agenda. We really worked on it. It was very professional. And in the book, we went into people's homes, we went into schools, we went into religious institutions, and we had a format where we talked about knowledge, the knowledge that what would happen, what we had learned about if there was a nuclear fallout. And we also talked about the knowledge that all of life is interrelated and interconnected, and we share this beautiful planet. And then we talked about decision, and the decision was we were encouraged to give up not just war, but all violence, because it became clear that any even small war could lead into a nuclear war, which is what was happening. And then we talked about action. And the action was to continue the educational outreach. And a number of families actually upped and moved to other parts of the country to start Beyond War chapters. Also part of the decision that we made, we would invite people to say yes to certain agreements that we wanted to make. If we were going to model giving up violence, there were agreements. And so I think you were going to show these agreements. And they were, I will resolve conflict. I will not use violence. I will maintain a spirit of goodwill. I will not preoccupy myself with an enemy. And I will work together with others to build a world beyond war. So in other words, we had to walk our talk, and we had to model this whole new way of thinking and being, because we knew that war was obsolete. And so this was part of the decisions that we were making ourselves and inviting other people to participate in. The other thing that we did to highlight the Beyond War movement was we established an annual Beyond War Award ceremony that was fantastic. Back in those days in the 80s, before satellites and everything were mainstream, I think we were the first to have some amazing satellite connections, linking up different countries all at the same time. And, we would hold our breath if the link was going to work or not. It was very dramatic. But the second Beyond War Award that we gave was to the IPPNW, International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. And so the ceremonies took place, one in San Francisco and one in Moscow. And the two physicians representing America and Russia, the Soviet Union, were receiving the award on behalf of their work. And so that link up between Moscow and San Francisco was our first big satellite connection. It was so dramatic. I remember my husband was sitting next to me weeping. He was so moved by it. The whole thing, I'm sure everybody on here would say, we held our breath, we prayed it would work. It was fantastic. It was amazing. So it was very inspiring. And I think you have a little clip to show. This is the response that people made following that particular ceremony.
November 13th, 1984, Soviet and American citizens were linked by television satellite for the first space bridge between San Francisco and Moscow.
I think this evening was absolutely extraordinary. The camaraderie between the two nations, the singing, the sense that peace can be a reality with people working together is very, very real. It's an extraordinary use of technology.
Жизнь должна продолжаться. Раз должна продолжаться, то, соответственно, единственное возможное смышление, то, чтобы все думали так. Не только мы, не только русские, но все люди на земле.
I just wish that President Reagan and every other politician in the world were watching this tonight, because there's hope for us all.
The feeling that we are all one, and the waving and the singing just seem to bring that feeling together on a human level.
People to people. I think for the first time, the Russian people saw the people in America, and, very naturally, not politicians, but people.
Его поддерживают все народы, не только наших двух стран, но и всех стран мира. И, конечно же, это будет способствовать делу мира.
Everybody in the Soviet Union and in the United States felt the great joy and the need for peace, because if they don't have peace, well then I'm not going to have a world to grow up in, and I really wanted to have a life. So I really think it was a real great thing.
And I should say that I'm so excited that I even cannot find the proper words to express all my feelings. That it was a great event, and I think a lot of people in the audience, and I'm sure all the participants have the same feelings that we have to work together.
You could feel that connection, you know, when we were waving, and just the hope that we will be able to build a world beyond war. We can do it.
Fantastic. Okay, so Winslow, welcome, and tell us about the successes. This was one success of Beyond War. Tell us a pickup from Libby's narrative, please. I know that you were in Massachusetts when you first heard about Beyond War, and that you began flying to California every month.
Yes, I heard about Beyond War for the first time from Mr. Lee and Margie Lee. But my personal involvement really took off when I experienced in a downlink in Cambridge the 1984 Space Bridge, excerpts from which we just played. And at the end of that program, the two audiences in Moscow and San Francisco began to spontaneously wave to each other. And it, it gets me even today. It was such a powerful people-to-people initiative, and it really felt like something new was possible. So another remarkable Beyond War project that brought together prominent Soviet and American scientists to write a series of papers around preventing accidental nuclear war. These experts realized that deterrence theory makes war more likely because all parties rely far too much on their assumed superiority of firepower to prevent war and assume that there will never be miscommunication, rather than realizing that our real security requires making connections and coming to a shared understanding of our common fate on the basis of all too real possibilities like nuclear winter. Our local Beyond War group in Massachusetts provided a venue for one of the American scientists and one of the Soviet scientists from the Breakthrough book to appear on the same stage to talk about the book and the process of putting it together. That process and the relationships it created may have been even more important than the book itself. We did similar tours in Russia too, all directed toward getting people to think about how security in the nuclear age means a lot more than who has the most missiles. And one of the scientists on the Soviet team turned out to be Gorbachev's science advisor. So Gorbachev actually read the book. And we can say maybe Beyond War played a small role in helping to end the Cold War. Anyway, the Breakthrough book came out in 1988, which is now 35 years ago. There was a brief moment of hope as the Cold War ended, but all too soon, new enemies and new wars surfaced, and now we are closer than ever to nuclear disaster. Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine and Gaza and Sudan are immense tragedies. So the question is, what kinds of initiatives are needed to prevent the next Ukraine, the next Gaza? Given that Breakthrough had a positive influence, we had an idea that doing a mass market paperback laying out the principles and values of the Beyond War way of thinking might be helpful. And a group of us volunteered to take it on. In a sense, our work had mostly been done for us already by people like Libby because we cribbed shamelessly from materials written by our predecessors in Beyond War and from the thinking done by our leadership, including the visionary and charismatic CEO, Richard Rathbun. Just one little fact from the book, awe-inspiring. No ancestor of ours made a fatal mistake before reproducing. And so our existence in this moment rests upon an unbroken chain that goes all the way back to the beginning of time. This capacity for survival on an evolutionary level confirms a profoundly hopeful possibility. Robert Ellsberg, the son of Daniel Ellsberg of Pentagon Papers fame, edited our little book. He was excited that it might become a bestseller. even available in the rack on at the supermarket checkout line. In spite of our best efforts, it didn't turn out that way. But Living Beyond War remains a good resource for someone interested in the kinds of internal shift of thinking, feeling, and acting that supports resolving conflicts without violence. The book came out in 2009, but it's more relevant than ever today. Because the primary reality of our time is that what everyone does or doesn't do affects everyone else and vice versa. My security and my health are interdependent with everyone else's security and health. When we fall into wars like in Ukraine or Gaza, there's a sense that not only nobody wins, but also that the wars we're fighting against each other are a huge distraction from the critical task of working together to sustain our life support system. Our interdependence with each other and the earth was always true, but now we are forced to accept that this truth has become an issue of survival. Authoritarian dictators are equally subject to this reality, along with democracies, no exceptions. Putin takes convicts out of prison to throw them into the front line in Ukraine. As he does that, the tundra in Siberia is on fire and releasing methane, accelerating warming. One way we tried here in our little town where I live in Maine to apply new thinking was to address our extreme political polarization here by inviting the local committees of the two major political parties to do something together for the good of the town. We planned a community meal, very simple, and asked people to contribute whatever they could for fuel assistance to the needy. And we managed to raise a significant amount of money. Because everyone agreed on the worthiness of the goal, it all went very smoothly. So a spirit of goodwill does work from the microcosm to the macrocosm. It's all about making personal connections and finding ways to put yourself in an adversary's shoes and see them in a larger context.
Okay, welcome, Tony. Now, Tony, Winslow said that you and Margie are responsible for getting him involved. You two have continued work since the Beyond War project and have been focusing on climate change. Tell us about the work that you've been leading right now.
That's right, Simeon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Winslow and Libby. It was nice to have the trip down memory lane. We were one of the couples that Libby referred to that moved from California to Massachusetts, and we worked full-time with Beyond War from 1982 to 1989. Then I had to go back to work and earn income like everybody else. And 4 years ago, and we're retired now, 4 years ago, Margie and I decided to go, what I say, all in on climate change. That so many of the principles and the concepts in what we're dealing with right now with climate change are exactly the same as they were decades ago with Beyond War. That we are one human family interconnected with all religions, all races, colors, nationalities, whatever. And that our survival is totally interconnected. The climate change work is pretty scary. It's a different dynamic than what you have with a war or letting loose a nuclear bomb. I mean, this is happening, and unless we actively stop it, it is going to take its day. And so over 4 years, Margie and I have developed, well, we've developed a team of about 12 people, and we have a 5-session course called Can We Stop Climate Change? And over the 4 years, we've led, together with our team, about 40 different webinars or courses to over 400 people. And at the essence of it is calling for a new way of thinking, new ways of thinking about our planet, our life support system, and we're educating. We go out and educate, talk with people, and the basic message is climate change is real, that it is caused primarily by human activity and the burning of fossil fuels, and that its impact on our planet and human civilization will be devastating. And we say human civilization, not human extinction, because there will always be people who survive and things like that. But human civilization is quite a fragile thing. And when that goes, we have lost a lot. So the evidence, in my opinion, is very straightforward, very convincing. There's not one side has a set of facts and another side has a different set of facts. There's a truth that is out there, and it's up for everybody to understand. Atmospheric temperatures have risen by 1.2 degrees Celsius over the past few decades. And the scientists are telling us you better not go beyond 1.5 because then holy hell breaks loose. The atmospheric carbon dioxide, which is what drives most of the problems, has increased by 50% from 280 to 420 parts per million. We've got to reverse that. We've got to stop it from increasing because it continues to rise. And then we have to turn the corner and bring it back down in the other direction. Sea levels are already rising as glaciers and ice throughout the planet is melting. And the coastal communities will be the first ones to feel the impact of climate change. The World Bank estimates that over 100 million people will be on the road by the year 2050 looking for a new place to live. And we here in the United States are having troubles receiving 24 Guatemalans coming across our southern border. How are we going to be able to take 100 million people on the road? We're also experiencing stronger hurricanes, heat domes, droughts, floods, and changes to atmospheric air currents and ocean water currents. And these, in the end, could be the most significant drivers of the changes in weather and climate that we are experiencing. We're in the middle of the start of a new El Nino, and warmer temperatures are expected over the next few years. And the impacts are predicted to be even worse than what we had last year, which was the worst on record. So it's gloomy, and we have to approach the problem with the straight truth but with hope, because we can turn the corner and we can bring about a change. And the planet will survive, although with many changes and fewer species. And as I said before, we're not that confident about human civilization. So if you think we have a lot of conflict out there right now, I've got a feeling we ain't seen nothing yet. So in summary, I'd say we need desperately new ways of thinking on this planet. And that starts with that we are one human family and we are totally interconnected with our life support system. All of us are going to make it together or not. We need to learn how to live sustainably so that we are not just trashing things and moving on to the next field. And we need how to learn to resolve conflict without violence. Those are two separate things. Resolve conflict and don't use violence. And at the core, we need to learn how to love in every situation. Take every situation that comes, crisis, conflict, and respond with an attitude of love and reconciliation and for the betterment of the whole. So that's what we've been doing.
Well, that's quite a tall task. Wow. So chapeau, as they say in French, hats off to you. So Margie, now tell us about reasons that we should be positive and that we shouldn't all just say, well, it's over. Winslow said, our foremothers and forefathers, that they had a reason to think, well, everything's getting better. Then Tony just told us, well, it's actually too late for some things. It's already over for some things. Tell us about why we should be hopeful today and keep trying.
Well, from a personal standpoint, I have to say I'm hopeful because I'm married to Tony and I have been for a long time. And we keep working at it. And I think that's what it takes. And we had 3 grandsons, and that's an enormous motivation, believe me. And I've read recently that one of the biggest motivators is caring for the next generation and our hopes for them and wanting to provide a good future for them. So that's motivation, but what is hope and where is hope today? I've learned it's definitely linked to action. Like, you can't just sit around and bemoan what's happening in the world. We really need to be doing things, whether it's talking to our neighbor or marching or communicating with our legislators. We need to take action. And action is rooted in knowledge or understanding a problem well enough to be able to act effectively. So as Beyond War, just as with Beyond War, the climate crisis approach needs to be broader than just addressing the technological aspects of it. We can change how we get our energy, but that's not going to secure our future necessarily. So ultimately, it's really an issue, as Tony mentioned, in our way of thinking. And I think we have a slide, a quote by Gus Speth. Gus Speth is a very impressive guy. He was the founder president of the World Resources Institute, co-founder of Natural Resources Defense Council, dean at the Yale School of the Environment, and author of several books about climate change and the environment. He's someone who's very knowledgeable about the difficulty of bringing about substantive change, and he understands the science and technology and politics of climate change. But this is a quote from him in an article this fall. He says, "More and more people are seeing the root of the problem in our misguided value system, and they are searching for new values and new lives to go with them. Many now see the need, not for more analysis, but for a spiritual awakening to a new consciousness." So in addressing the threat of nuclear war and potential climate catastrophe, there's hope in working with a vision that can lead us to healing our relationship with each other and with our life support system. What we think and what we believe is the basis for our action. And that's why it's so important that we look at this and think about this with, the challenges that we are facing on the planet today. We need to dig deep into our way of thinking and what's behind our attitudes and our actions. If we can change, if there's a spiritual awakening, there could be many, many benefits. Think of it: more connectedness, cooperation, less alienation and hostility, a healthier environment, more stability, richer lives, gratitude, appreciation. These are just some of the things. I mean, doesn't that sound good? And it's not pie in the sky. There are examples of this, many throughout the world now. People are leading different lives. They're creating new communities. But getting back to the climate change issue itself, part of the problem has been Americans in particular haven't really understood it. They've thought that, climate change was something that would affect the polar bears, or something that was happening somewhere on some remote island. Or maybe it would happen in the future, but, it wasn't going to be part of our lives. It wasn't going to be something we would have to deal with. So, and everybody has a lot on their plates, so people tended not to want to deal with it. But we are seeing it come home now to our backyards, and, who hasn't experienced the wildfire smoke? In California and also on the East Coast, it's been a thing. And as of 2022 in the United States, we had 18 weather and climate disasters that cost at least $1 billion each. And that increased to 23. There were 23 this year as of the middle of September. So it's really here and it's really now. So then the question is, should we be optimistic or should we be pessimistic? And Paul Hawken, he edited the book Drawdown, which has been very popular. It is an early kind of comprehensive look at solutions. He's also written a book called Blessed Unrest about worldwide initiatives, and it's very inspiring. And when he's asked whether he's optimistic or pessimistic, his answer is, if you look at the science that describes what is happening on Earth today and aren't pessimistic, you don't have the correct data. But if you meet the people in this unnamed movement and aren't optimistic, you haven't got a heart. So you
Wonderful.
could make a case for either. You could be optimistic, you could be pessimistic about this. And I read a book recently by two German activists who coined the term possibilist. And I think that is really a good way to think about it. It's really up to us. It's possible. They suggest thinking creatively, more holistically, and they're pushing for a new vision of economics, politics, agriculture, really a transformational change. And they're not alone in that. There are many people in the world working on this. So, and I think that gives us hope to see what's happening. So with this as a backdrop, we still need to act in the near term to curb fossil fuel use and to stop emitting greenhouse gases. And of course, the UN conference that just ended, they did actually use the term fossil fuels for the first time, and that was encouraging. So, you know, little steps, but I don't think that would have happened without the pressure being put on them by people around the world. So the good news is that we really can do this. What we need is really political will. In terms of the climate crisis, wind and solar are the cheapest and cleanest forms of energy ever. Nothing compares with that. We have technology and we have tools at hand. In our courses, we use the MIT Sloan Climate Interactives modeling tool called En-ROADS that helps us to evaluate the various actions we can take and how effective they would each be, what impact they would each have. So there are many practical things we can do, and I could go through a whole list of them, but that might take the rest of the program. So I'll leave it at that. Beyond War was really based on a vision of a world beyond war. And similarly with climate change, we need to envision a world where humans live harmoniously with the natural system. We see ourselves as part of the natural system, that we are one. And having a vision really helps to keep us focused on the long term and also helps us to weather everyday setbacks, because it's not an easy road. You know, there are so many challenges that we're facing, but what gives me hope is I really believe that we're intelligent, we're innovative, we have a spiritual side to us, and I really believe we can do this.
So that brings us to our roundtable discussion. We are one. So I'd like to begin with Libby first. So fostering open and sincere communication seems to be both the means and the end of your efforts. Libby started our discussion by showing us Soviets and Americans waving to each other through the space bridge. Winslow brought rival U.S. political parties to the same dinner table. In less than 4 years, Margie and Tony have taught the course, Can We Stop Climate Change, to over 400 people. Yet fostering open and sincere communication is not an aspiration of today's political parties, authoritarian or not. Instead, they use the communication of outrage to strengthen political affiliation. But outrage is detrimental to open and sincere communication. At the very least, outrage dehumanizes and delegitimizes the opposing political view. In the extreme, it renders all diplomacy irrelevant. The concern about so-called deep fakes may be understood in this light. A spurious video of a politician declaring something outrageous isn't dangerous per se, no matter how well it's produced, unless the public believes that politician should make such a declaration. So today, what does it look like when all open and sincere communication is sidelined by the communication of outrage? Just take a look at Israel and Gaza. Yet, the challenge seems to be that none of us are immune from communicating outrage. Today, it's just normal political discourse. So What do Libby, Winslow, Margie, and Tony think about this? And are there steps each of us can take to foster open and sincere communication? Libby?
Well, it's a huge question, and we are living in an age of communication that's very troubling to me. I was hosted last night at my house a gathering of Jewish and Palestinians, citizens who we've been working together in a dialogue capacity for more than 30 years. And there was a young woman here last night, 19, a college student, and she was sharing with this group about the difficulty on her college campus of getting real information. And just what you're talking about. And they get their information by going to, I don't even understand it. At my age, it's beyond my capacity. They go on these programs or social connections where they put in a question and ask a fact, and then they get information back. And this young woman said, you don't even know what to believe, and it's terrible, and it's causing us to hate each other, and people are afraid of each other, and they're posing enemies, and they're blaming. And so I think what you said is a huge truth about the information being put out there. Half the time isn't believable, and you don't know how to respond to it. And so my feeling is there has to be some kind of a test that we have as individuals where we look at the situation and we ask the question, how is that really working? If somebody tells me that something is happening, then I can take myself through a little process that just says, okay, if they said this and this and this, how is it playing out? How is it working? How's that working for me? Is it for life? Is it promoting life? Is it promoting the relationship? Is it adding positivity to my daily experience? Or do I see it's going to lead down kind of a dead end road? Somehow we have to be willing to do some soul searching and ask what is for life. We've all talked today a lot about in the knowledge part of whatever we're doing, we're looking at what is the truth about life, which is that all of life is interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent, and we're all totally dependent on this one amazing living system. So everything we do has to fall into line with, is it obeying that fact, or is it destroying those relationships? So I think we just have to keep challenging ourselves when we are abusing the system that's creating the climate crisis, when we are unwilling to get along with our neighbor and we pose enemies. Is that part of the solution or part of the problem? So I kind of agree with what Margie said. You know, we're challenging ourselves to a new consciousness, maybe call it a spiritual awakening or a deeper understanding of how we are all one. And I think that's very, very challenging. It's very difficult. You can feel people are terrified of acknowledging this oneness because you know what? It means you have to change something. I might have to give something up. Am I willing? So it's a big issue, and it's worth talking a lot about. One last thing I'll say is the cost of war is the most expensive thing for the people and for the environment. If we think that the climate crisis isn't going to be affected by all these wars that are ruining the environment, unleashing poison into the atmosphere, killing people, we could take all that money invested in war and hatred and violence and put it into saving the planet and building the world that we would like to see.
Winslow?
Yeah, well, picking up on what Libby said, there is something new in the world, which is called solutions journalism. You can Google it, that I find very hopeful and exciting. And it's a simple realization on the part of journalists that obviously all their usual values are important, like being as objective as possible. But added to that, the idea that responsible journalism requires us to report on solutions to difficult problems and not merely hit us over the head with endless examples of what's wrong. There's a very, very prevalent model, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. And it's just kind of leaving out all the good things that are going on in the world that, Margie mentioned Paul Hawkins' movement around the world of, I guess it's now hundreds of millions of organizations that are working to do things on a more solution-oriented level. In terms of Gaza, I just keep thinking about an organization, a community that Beyond War gave its award to one year called Neva Shalom Wahat Al Salam. And I Google it every once in a while, and it seems to be pricking along. It's a community not too far from Jerusalem where Muslims, Jews, and Christians live together, work out their conflicts, and they have a school where they learn each other's traditions. And I've always thought that was a wonderful, wonderful example of what is possible. I'm sure they're having their tensions right now, but I hope they're able to continue.
Tony?
Well, I was thinking as Winslow and Libby were talking that when I went back to work in the late 80s, I'm a certified public accountant, and I did a lot of work as a forensic accountant and testifying in arbitration and courts of law. And every time that I testified, I had to raise my right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if you stay within a court of law system, the legal system, that principle is as valid today as it ever was. And it's a standard that each person that I always held myself to, second guessing myself. Am I saying the whole truth? Am I creating another impression that somebody might walk away with? And so I think we just need to get back to basics. And we are in a society now that is governed by the post-truth era. There were books that were put out. I read them voraciously, when they appeared 10 years ago. I couldn't believe that we were going down that path, but we have. And people need to be asking those questions. What is true? How do you know the truth? In climate change, it is extraordinarily important because as we just saw, this week, today, you have trouble. Major powers are preventing even the words of fossil fuel to be incorporated in any kind of a conclusion. So getting back to the truth and putting ourselves not above that, but right in the middle of that, of how do we make sure that we are just telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So,
Margie?
Well, one thing that we've found is quite effective in working on climate change is to encourage people to get engaged at their local level, get to know their community, get to know their neighbors, see what you can do in your own town. Maybe your municipal buildings can put up solar panels. It builds community, and it helps to control the BS because you see firsthand what people are doing or not doing in their lives. And I think one of the things that we also do is walk your talk. And in Beyond War, we use those agreements that we talked about earlier. And so when you work that way and people work that way, there's tremendous satisfaction because you feel like you're living your message. If you hold yourself to these agreements, you're consistent with what your message is, and you're a demonstration. You're not just saying things and you're not just arguing or trying to get your way. You're actually demonstrating what this means. And so this ties together with the idea of working really locally in your community, because people see whether you're kind of walking your talk. There are a lot of things in climate change that, are kind of optional. And, but I think overall, if you do some of them, Tony and I put up solar panels, we have a heat pump. We just insulated our house, further insulated our house. We have a hybrid car. We're trying not to fly as much because that's a great contributor of greenhouse gases. And we work together with other people in our community, and we're there and people know us and we know them. And I think that builds trust too. We've had a couple of times where, like in town, they do creative things, like they'll have kind of like a petting zoo for EVs. People can go and, like kick the tires and test drive them and check them out and everything. And there's trust there because who the people are, your neighbors, these people who are showing you their EV or their hybrid car. So those are some things that I think, I think we are kind of like lost in some of the, I find it very distressing and disturbing what Libby was talking about is young people and the whole social media thing and the anonymity of a lot of that. They don't even know who they're talking to. And it's very upsetting, I think, to a lot of them. And so hopefully some of them will get connected with face-to-face groups, and I think we need to encourage more of that.
Okay. So yes, Libby, you have something you want to say?
I wanted to add one more thing to what Margie just said and to remind me of what Winslow shared. A quote that has helped us in our dialogue work is, an enemy is one whose story you have not heard. And I think, Winslow talked about crossing party lines and getting together in his community and how, it helps you get to know what helps that person make a decision. Where do your thoughts come from? Why do you believe that? And Margie just talked about building trust and sharing. And I think that we too often pose somebody that we don't know as an other instead of seeing them as a potential friend and partner. So an enemy is one whose story you haven't heard. And we found in our work that sitting down with somebody face to face, eye to eye, and saying, tell me about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What motivates you? What inspires you? Can be a game changer. And that was one of the things that we shared with this young woman last night, because she said, we don't know how to talk to each other. So we were talking about just ask your friends to sit down and get to know each other and stop looking up facts on your cell phone and trying to figure each other out. So anyway, if people want to get to know their neighbor, just take them out for coffee, have them over, share your story, make that heart connection.
So Libby, now tell us, oh yeah, Winslow has something. Winslow.
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to put in a suggestion. I think it helps a lot in this very, very noisy world to have a meditation practice. If you can kind of begin the day spending some time in complete silence, it makes you a better listener when you get to the point where you are relating to somebody else.
So what I'm hearing is a lot of what can I do, not what can you do. So I'd like to ask now, Libby, can you tell us, or Winslow, excuse me, can you tell us, this is how people can get involved. So when I would like to get involved and do those things you were saying, take those steps that only I can, what should we do if people would like to get in touch with Beyond War Northwest?
Sure, we'll go to their website and they'll make it very easy for you to get in touch. This requires a little bit of concept of explanation, just that Beyond War back in the 80s was centered in Palo Alto, and when it morphed into more of an environmental group and then ended completely, a group of people in the Portland, Oregon area kept it going. And they have this website, and that's a way, as it says on the site, to find a local group.
Okay. So you would recommend then people reach out if they're interested a good first step to take might be to contact Beyond War Northwest. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, there it is at beyondwarnw.org. And Libby, so tell us now, people can also reach out to you if they want to get to know more about these dinners that you're hosting, these community dinners that you're hosting and all that. Is that right? They
Sure.
can
So
reach
if
out to you this
somebody,
way? Mhm.
yeah, if somebody wants to know more about dialogue, especially Jewish Palestinian living room dialogue, they can actually connect with me more directly. This is a website that's very challenging to go through. It represents many, many years of history, and it's kind of overwhelming. So it's probably better to just directly contact me.
Okay, excellent.
And if somebody wants to know, they can get my email from you, Simeon, if that works.
Absolutely. So they can
Okay.
contact me at Simeon at
They can look at this
simeonmoore.com.
website, but it can give them information and ideas and inspiration. But in terms of participating in something, they should contact me.
Okay. Well, do so. Please reach out to Libby if you'd like to get involved, if you have any questions. And Winslow, then we have your website again here about your paintings and all that. People, if they'd like to get in touch with you directly, they can just do it through the website. Is that right?
Correct.
There's even his mobile phone number, his email. Feel free to reach out to Winslow with your questions and comments if you'd like to get involved or you're just interested to know more. Now we have here the Can We Stop Climate Change website. Margie, tell us a little bit about this, or Tony.
I think I'll defer to Tony. He's more the organizer.
So this gives a great overview of our course, the 5-session course and what happens in each meeting right there at the left. Can we stop it? And actually we're doing an update in a week on this to bring it a little bit more current. And this is also a place where people can sign up for future courses. You see here at the bottom on the left here, courses are typically limited to 18 participants, and that we hold to that so that everybody gets a chance to talk and dialogue in each session. And then if you go back up to the top, Simeon, you can click on course sign up. And these are, here we go. And these are some of the courses that are currently available. There are some more that are coming online. But if you take a look here, like at the University of Virginia, Ollie, we have connected with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which offers lifelong learning for seniors primarily. And our course is just perfectly made for their programs. And so I personally have been teaching at the University of North Texas, and starting up at the University of Miami, and then UVA and George Mason, and we're going to be busy. So things are moving out pretty quickly now.
Wow. Okay. So feel free to get in touch with Tony and or Margie at canwestopcc.org. Sign up for one of their courses. And how much do these courses cost about?
Everything is free. We do it all volunteer basis, and there's no charge at all.
Well, except if they do it through OSHA.
Oh, right.
They may have to pay if they do it through OSHA. When we do the courses just on our own, we don't charge for them.
Okay, so there may be some.
The top course there, it says online open registration, and this is a one that's in Texas, and so this is done by part of our team. There's no charge for that one, but any course that has Ollie next to it, there's probably a charge.
Okay, excellent. But in any case, please reach out to Tony and or Margie if you have any questions. canwestopcc.org. Thank you so very much to Libby Traubman, to Winslow Myers, to Margie and Tony Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So
keep on keeping on.
So let's take a look at what is coming up next Wednesday on Vienna Live. We have here Duye, the Golden Shekere. I guess that's how that's pronounced. It's a percussion instrument from from Nigeria. So we call them standards for a reason. They implore every artist to bring her own voice to the irresistible conversation we call jazz. In her new album, The Golden Sekere, soul singer Douye does just that. Well-known tunes like I've Got You Under My Skin, My Funny Valentine, and It Don't Mean a Thing meet Nigerian percussive festivity in an intimate and joy-filled encounter of the modern and traditional from the two cities she calls home, Lagos and Los Angeles. Come welcome Douye to our show. As always, all information about upcoming shows can be found at www.simeonmoro.com. Once again, that is the Golden Shekere next Wednesday. Again, thank you so very much to Libby Traubman, to Winslow Myers, to Tony and Margie Lee. Thank you very much to Frederick and Victoria Mulligan, as well as Agnieszka and Benoit Rivole for their support of this show. Thank you also to Mary Schlesinger for the lovely Viennese library you can see behind me. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile. From Nobleboro, Maine, New London, New Hampshire, Wayland, Massachusetts, and San Mateo, California, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Bye.